In the land of Skyrim, there lives the Giants, a race of enormous humanoids with enough strength to send some poor sap beyond the stratosphere and right through both Master and Secunda like a 50 caliber bullet. But there is far more to these creatures than meets the eye besides their godlike strength. Like, who are they really? Where did they come from? Why do they like mammoths so much? How many kinds of giants exist? And where the hell are all the female giants? Hello, my fellow hirelings of House Telvanni. I'm Neloth, and in the pursuit of knowledge, I wanted to learn everything I can about the giant race, especially their origins and impact on Tamriel. But I am a Dunmer, so I don't really know much about the giants since they don't live in Morrowind. Which is why I am bringing back an old friend of mine who was last seen in my Nordic Gods video, a Nord named Njord. A strange name to be sure, but this man knows just about everything relating to Skyrim, and as long as I give him the occasional loaf of bread, he'll tell me whatever I want, so it's a true win-win situation. So with all that being said, let us explore the rich lore surrounding the giants. Now, I want us to look at the appearance of the giants first, as we will be able to get some critical information on them just off of how they look. Aside from being extremely tall, we see that they have a far more barbaric aesthetic to them, wearing furs that look to be the same fur as the mammoths that they shepherd, but they could also be skins from wolves, elk, and saber cats as well. They also adorn their furs with bones, likely being trophies from animals that they have hunted, given that we see some giants have a troll skull displayed on them. When looking at the clubs the giants use, for the longest time I thought it was just a massive femur bone, but taking a closer look, the club appears to be made from a small tree that was ripped out of the ground, roots and all, and sanded to be smoother. Then they attached a big ol' rock to the end of the roots and tied it all up with leather, giving us the iconic clubs we know and fear. And the most important feature is how the giants have very pale white skin and have pointed ears. Pointed ears being a feature that only elves have and not humans. This bit of information will be extremely important later. Not only that, but we can see some tiny spikes or bumps coming out from the giant's forehead, which is extremely interesting because the orcs that we see in Skyrim seem to have similar spikes adorning their temples. The final thing to note is that giants seem to have ritualistic scars adorning their bodies. What these symbols mean is unknown, but giants also fashion these same symbols into the tusks of their mammoths, likely to indicate ownership over them. Next, we should look at the origins of these giants, which will be a tad complicated given there is conflicting information on them. See, Njord and others believe that these 12-foot tall creatures share an ancestry with the Nords through the Atmorans being the progenitors to the Nords. According to Njord, the Atmorans were once an intelligent race of giants, and then for unknown reasons, the Atmorans split into two races, the Nords being smaller but increasing in intelligence, and the giants who grew larger and lost some of their intelligence. Now, this origin story that Njord graciously told is very plausible and makes sense for why at one point there was a massive war between Ysgramor and his 500 companions, and Cinnamur and his giant clans. These two races splitting would lead to this sort of conflict, but it doesn't explain why giants have elven-like features. Atmorans were human and had human-like features, including rounded ears. This is sort of supported by a story Njord told me in my Nordic Gods video about how Ysgramor was once tricked by Hermaeus Mora into growing pointed ears until Shor saved him. While the story itself may not be completely true, it hammers down the point that Atmorans were human through and through. Solely based on their appearance, it looks as if the giants originated from the snow elves that once inhabited Skyrim before they were slaughtered by the Nords and tortured by the dwarves. Here is a snow elf, possibly the last snow elf, Knight Paladin Gelibor. We can see that he has pale skin, pointed ears, and whitish-bluish eyes. And here is a giant. We can see he has pale skin, pointed ears, and you already know this. We don't know exactly how the Snow Elves ended up in Skyrim, but when they were building up their empire, a sect of Snow Elves, or Elnafey that would eventually turn into Snow Elves, may have split and evolved into the giants that we know now. Similar to how some of the Elnafey became the very tall Altmer and also the very short King Bosmer. Now, while Njord and I may disagree on the origins of the giants, we seem to relatively agree about everything else about giants, from their culture to their history. When discussing the appearances, we pointed out how giants are a primitive people, yet they aren't animals like trolls that attack on sight, usually remaining passive unless one gets too close, and even then, giants will try to warn intruders away before defending their land. One of the artists for Skyrim that created the giants, Jonah Loeb, modeled the giants after his father because he wanted them to look like gentle shepherds and not monstrous beings. Additionally, giants have enough intelligence to do a variety of things, from creating tools and clothes to tending mammoths and making campfires. Speaking of mammoths, it seems like the life of a giant revolves around them, as we constantly see them herding their beloved mammoths and carving symbols into their tusks as a sign of identity. And giants don't seem to have this relationship with any other animal. However, Njord believes that the relationship between giant and mammoth is out of mutual respect. Giants fiercely guard their mammoths and provide them with care, company, and even communicate with them. And in return, the giants also enjoy their company and use the milk the mammoths generate to make cheese, which they find to be quite delicious, probably, but I wouldn't know about that because my palate is far more refined. Anyways, the giants have a deep relationship with their mammoths, and when one falls, giants will mourn them deeply. A great example is northeast of Mistwatch Tower, where we see a giant having a moment to himself after his mammoth recently fell. One can even stand right next to the giant without being attacked and share in the moment, helping him grieve in a bittersweet moment. When a mammoth does fall, the giants will eventually cook and eat them, use their bones to decorate their camps, and likely use their fur for clothing, but this is likely out of respect, not wanting to waste the materials their woolly friends provide. It's very clear that giants are emotional creatures, not just to their mammoths, but also to each other, which is why giants will usually belong in either small families or clans that can number in the hundreds. Giants who stay in small families are quite similar to regular families, having a male and female parent and then a few children. These families usually stay isolated in the mountains where nobody can really find them. Njord tells an interesting tale about a silver werewolf named Hildegard, who found a father giant all alone by a cold campfire, crying to himself. When the silver werewolf asked what was wrong, he said that his mate and child were taken by goblins. And so the silver werewolf set out to save the giants from the goblins by pitting the goblins against a group of Nords, causing enough chaos to allow the giants she freed to get home safely. When the father giant reunited with his family once more, he asked the silver werewolf how he could repay her, and the werewolf simply said, "I will ask you to smile, so I can see how you treasure them above all else." And he did. Now, in this story, we can assume that the mate the silver werewolf saved was a female giant, so this begs the question, where the hell are they in Skyrim? I think the best theory is that during this time, most of the female giants are residing in the mountains that are inaccessible to us, kind of like in locations where Skuldafn is located. There are, however, female giants that take a more active role in their society, and some behave as matriarchs or leaders of their clans, but by the 4th era, we simply just don't encounter them. The real reason, though, is that they just didn't make any female models for the giants. Now, like I said previously, giants can belong to clans rather than small families, and these clans are usually ruled by a chieftain whose rule is absolute, and in times of conflict, these chieftains will rally their troops and lead organized attacks. This is seen with the half-giant Sinmur, a chieftain that led hundreds of other giants against Ysgramor and his 500 companions in a bloody war that resulted in heavy casualties on both sides. According to Njord, giants of various clans will gather at ceremonial sites in order to trade, mate, and communicate with one another. Now, giants don't really own these ceremonial sites or guard them like town guards guard a city, but they simply make use of the space whenever they desire to. They also have sites that are reserved for their dead and seem to have intricate beliefs about death in general. Njord says that when a giant is sick or dying, they will migrate to a place called Secunda's Kiss, southwest of Whiterun, to die and be buried. If a giant dies outside of Secunda's Kiss, like in battle or by getting slaughtered by a psychopath that uses their toes for potions all the while they're just trying to peacefully exist on the land, other giants will find their bodies and make sure they get a proper burial. I find this to be quite fascinating because it leads me to believe that the giants have religious beliefs that might be an archaic form of the divines. Remember, Njord says that giants were once Atmorans, or snow elves if you believe my argument, meaning they could worship Arche, the god of death and burials, or Orki, which is the Nordic version of Arche. Obviously, the giants wouldn't worship the same Arche or Orki that the dominant races of Tamriel do, but rather a much more primitive version, similar to how goblins worship Muluk, who is seen as an interpretation of the Daedric prince, Malakath. Perhaps the reason why giants cherish their mammoths so much is also out of religious devotion on top of mutual respect. Mammoths could be holy creatures in their eyes. But this is all just a theory based on heavy speculation, and Njord is looking at me like my eyes are made of tentacles, so let's just move on. When communicating, giants speak in their own language they developed called Giantish, which just sounds like grunts and roars to the common peasant. But Njord is an individual that has learned the bare basics of their speech and says anyone can learn it if they have enough dedication. And giants are apparently peaceful towards those that speak in their tongue. But some giants have also been known to speak in the Tamrielic language as well. Granted, this was back in the Third Era in the Daggerfall days, so the legitimacy of their Tamrielic speech is spotty at best. But these specific giants have used their language to trade with other races and even work with them in a few cases as either guards or even gladiators. Why they do this is unknown, whether to obtain goods for their services or just for the love of the game, who really knows. Now, Nords have a very long history with these giants, one of both bloodshed but also a little bit of harmony. See, giants are quite territorial, but they don't seem to understand that the Nords are also territorial as well, which leads many giants to encroach on the lands of many farmers, where they sometimes even steal their livestock. Many farmers have a long-standing tradition where, once a year, they will offer the giants one of their cows to appease them. The farmers that offer their cow will typically paint them in a fashion similar to the many giant symbols that are seen around their camp, as a way of showing the farmers offering the cow willingly. What the giants do with these cows is unknown, but they likely kill them and use their bodies for food, tools, and clothing. Because giants wander into Nordic territory, this has started very bloody wars, just like the one I mentioned between Sinmur and Ysgramor. This unnamed war was extremely violent and ended up with casualties for both the Atmorans and the giants alike. Njord says that Ysgramor himself is attributed with killing hundreds of giants before facing Sinmur himself. where Ysgramor shattered Sinmer's club with his legendary battle axe Wuthrad and proceeded to slay him in righteous Nordic victory. The bodies of giants are also widely sought after for their alchemical ingredients, like their toes, thumbs, and molars. Less known is that there is allegedly a fungus that grows from the armpits of giants that can be used to create a strong narcotic. And it makes me wonder, how the fuck did anyone figure all this stuff out? Now, the various Jarls of Skyrim will also regularly post bounties on giants in order to cull their numbers and make sure they don't attack their land. This is especially true in Dawnstar, where they are apparently a real problem and are despised by the Jarl Skald the Elder. However, those in the Empire have decreed that giants should be left alone unless absolutely necessary. Not all relations between giants and Nords are bloody though, as there are many Nords that enjoy having them in their borders. Some Nords, like Njord over here, enjoy observing them and also like writing poetry about them and their simple yet beautiful lives. Now, we have talked a great deal about the giants that reside in Skyrim, but I should point out that they are one of many different kinds of giants. For example, there are giants that live in the Hrothgar area of High Rock that are more or less the same as regular giants, except they have much grayer skin, kinda like the sexy Dunmer. There are sea giants who also have gray-like skin, but with a hint of silvery blue. According to Njord, sea giants are so rare that they are considered legend and myth. But Njord swears to all his gods that he has seen one before, which is why I am mentioning them in this video. Sea giants are seen as being far smarter than normal giants and live almost entirely at sea, only making land in the coldest of winters. When they do make land, they slaughter and pillage and then just disappear out into the Sea of Ghosts once more. What's interesting about sea giants, though, is that they don't seem to have any of the elven features that regular giants do, having far more Nordic-like features, leading me to believe that the giants that split from the Atmorans were actually the sea giants and not the regular giants. Half giants also exist, and Sinmer is one such case I have brought up, but also Lyris Titanborn, a legendary Nordic warrior that was seen in the Second Era and was said to have the blood of giants in her veins. And who could disprove that when she makes Altmer look like school children? And the most interesting type of giant that is far more different from the rest is the Frost Giant. These types of alien-looking creatures possess pure white skin, making them paler than the Snow Elves, white fur, 2 curved horns, and 4 to 5 eyes. It is implied that frost giants are related in some way to normal giants and are referred to as their cousins. However, how they are related eludes me. Honestly, their appearance makes them look like the bigger, cooler, older brother of frost trolls. Ysgramor was said to have slaughtered so many frost giants that he became covered in their blue blood, which is why many Nords, like Njord over here, adorn blue war paint on their faces, to honor Ysgramor himself. Frost giants are far more rare, likely because of Ysgramor, and isolate themselves to the farthest and coldest reaches of Skyrim. When actually playing Skyrim, you will only ever encounter frost giants in the Forgotten Vale, an area that is sacred to the Snow Elves. Unlike regular giants, frost giants don't seem to wear much clothing or furs, just a simple loincloth. This is likely because frost giants have a complete immunity to the cold, given that they can resist 100% of frost magic, but do have a 33% weakness to fire. Frost giants don't seem to have a greater culture, at least not anymore, but they do like to collect things. Some collect bones, but in the Forgotten Vale, frost giants have been known to collect jeweled paragons, which are extremely valuable keys that can open portals to unreachable areas in the Forgotten Vale. There is next to no information on these beings or their origins, but there is one famous frost giant known as Karstag that we can get some information off of based on his past. Karstag lived in Solstheim in the late 3rd era and lived in a giant ice fortress called Castle Karstag, which I have to admit is a little lame. It's like if I called my Telvanni tower Tower Neloth. It is unknown if Karstag built this fortress himself or simply moved in, but I like to think that Karstag built it himself with ice magic. Karstag also behaves much more differently from any other giant with how regal he acts. For example, in his castle he has his own throne room and banquet hall, and lords over his castle like a king. On top of this, he employs Reeklings to guard and maintain his castle, and also has an uneasy truce with the Skull. And if that wasn't enough, Karstag was personally involved in the Great Hunt, which was foretold by the Skull in the Blood Moon Prophecy. The Great Hunt is a competition that the Daedric Prince Hircine hosts near the end of every era. Karstag was one of 3 champions in the Great Hunt personally selected by Hircine, further proving his power and notoriety. Karstag was eventually killed by the Nerevarine in Morrowind, but death did not stop this legend, as the Dragonborn from Skyrim brought the skull of Karstag to his throne room in order to summon him to a duel, and when defeated by the Dragonborn, they are granted the power to summon Karstag only 3 times and never again. Like I said before, Karstag is very different from all other giants, behaving more like a king than a shepherd or sea raider, but I still wanted to include him in this video nonetheless. And so that's the giants, creatures that are known by everyone but not as well understood. Njord and I agree that the best takeaway is that these creatures, while troublesome, are relatively peaceful with a very in-depth and unique culture and society. They are simply shepherds with a unique connection to mammoths and simply want to be left alone in peace. Mostly. I also find my theory of the giants having an archaic form of worship to be quite interesting as well, with how they bury their dead and have such a strong bond with their mammoths. They are also deeply emotional, which has led me to become far more hesitant when deciding if I should engage in combat with a giant or not. I would also like to thank Njord for coming once again to share his Nordic wisdom. A proud Nordic scholar with deep knowledge of the land that is invaluable to a wizard like me that loves to consume as much knowledge and lore as possible. Thank you once again to Njord. I would also like to thank my channel members for their patronage, which helps in making videos like these. And those members are Mirak, Sovdark, Conarunda, Nork, Will Ernst, The Proud Prince, Deadpool Maoista, Skooma Addict, JJ Ensid, Ranger McKay, Grud, Milani Stilla, and Alex Fridley. And if you would like to see my videos earlier by either 24 hours or even 3 days, then consider becoming a member. All members get early access, and Oathman and Mouths will get shoutouts at the beginning or end of almost every video. And that's all I wrote! A video where I analyze the Giants of Skyrim from their origins to their culture and history. This was a fun video that I enjoyed making, especially because the subject matter interested me greatly. And ever since I met that one giant mourning his mammoth years ago, I just knew that one day I had to learn all I can about these inspiring creatures. So, with all that being said, make sure to like the like button, like the subscribe button, and like the bell notification down below to be updated on future videos. And I will see you whenever the fuck I decide to upload again. House Telvanni be with you.
Please, O hero of Skyrim, I shall be ever so grateful.